Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. I'm excited to welcome you to the first of our new Take 20 series created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These quick-hitting 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry will come to you twice monthly. The PDMI's Brand Response Council brings together media outlets, media agencies, and the clients both serve to build a more powerful consensus and relationships across various mediums. The council serves as a visionary group looking ahead to find the brightest marketers and marketing ideas working in the evolving media marketplace. It's just one of 4 councils operated by the PDMI and its members. For more information, you can visit our website at thepdmi.com/membership. Now let's get to the first episode, Take 20. I'd like to welcome your host, Christopher Foster of Modern Postcard, Chair of the Brand Response Council. Take it away, Chris.
Greetings, welcome in everybody. I'm so pleased to be here. Like Tom said, I'm Chris Foster, VP of New Business Development at Modern Postcard, but here at the PDMI, I'm the chairperson for the Brand Response Council. Absolutely pleased and thrilled to join Sean Robertson and Heather Molina and Brigade Demeyer. Sean is from Dish Media, Heather is from Red Door Interactive, and Brigade is from the Habit Burger and Yum brands. And we are here because we are talking about the 2020 Playbook. So most likely in December, January, you had this. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's well thought out. You had your competition, your behavior trends, some new services, some sales projections. Whoop, out it goes. March or April, it's gone. You have this. So how do you rewrite the new playbook? That's what we're talking about today. We've seen a lot of new ideas, but the challenge is your new plan. You had to answer some questions you didn't even know you had to ask. Crazy. So we're going to chat with some of these industry leaders. We're going to see and get their perspectives on how businesses are responding and really learn from their insights. So we're going to jump right in. Sean Robertson from Dish, I'm going to begin with you. Question for you, and I'm curious. What is the single most impactful marketing shift that you're seeing made by your advertisers?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for this time. Very happy to get together with you all to talk. I see you guys almost on a weekly basis now, but it's great to have an opportunity to have a very pointed conversation about some of these shifts that we've seen. So from the Dish and Sling standpoint, what we've seen is an overall response of the marketplace to utilizing different tactics of execution. And for us, that really means programmatic. Programmatic is a space we've been in with Sling for 5 years now. And Dish, with our addressable, we've had the ability to target audiences. But programmatic, particularly on Sling, allows audiences to be activated against very quickly in a seamless way. And talk about playbooks, right? We are less on a quarter to quarter and looking at month to month decisioning, week to week adjustments. And without having to have commitments far out in advance, without having the tea leaves to read to understand what seasonality it might impact our business, we have to be able to adjust very quickly to the needs of our agencies and advertising partners. So there's been a very quick rebound for programmatic execution, and a lot of advertisers who were dipping their toes in that pool earlier in the year or late last year have really made a shift and throttled ahead in programmatic across our portfolio, which has been a very good thing for us, but we think also very good to move the marketplace forward, particularly for performance advertisers.
Cool. Well, thank you. That's interesting. And I think that a lot of folks are changing the cadence of their planning schedules, right? It might have been 6 months out, suddenly it's 4 months out, suddenly it's 2 months out, right? Because everything is rapidly changing even now, right? We thought that things were tapering down and changing in May and June and settling down, and then suddenly it's the end of July and things are new. So Heather, I'm going to ask you that same question. For your advertisers that you're working with at Red Door Interactive, what's the biggest, most impactful marketing shift that they're making?
I would say, echoing what you just said about planning, first and foremost, it's week by week in some cases. It's not even like 4 weeks. It's let's focus on the agenda or the goals and the objectives for this week, and let's then revisit and see how that plays out moving forward. I will say that we do have a lot of clients in our cross-channel services department, which I head up, who are pushing more into programmatic, display more specifically. We have obviously a lot of people still playing very heavily in the search space, and kind of surprising to me, we've had a lot of clients doubling down more so on paid social, specifically Instagram and Facebook, in light of everything. And you're talking about that 2020 playbook and things that are just kind of coming out of nowhere, and having to think about things that you've never really had to, as a brand, be challenged by or really focus in on. You're having to open your mind, take it week by week, and just sort of determine where your budgets need to flow based on where you're seeing that audience play against your brand and stuff. So we're spending a lot of time thinking strategically every single week, the start of every week, about what happened last week, where do we need to be headed at perform, where do we need to be going from here.
That's interesting, right? That, and it changes the pace of work. It changes the anxiety, right? And I think that it taxes people, and it's forcing marketers now to even rethink how they, begin planning their weekly work, and juggling that on a daily basis.
I would say absolutely 100% yes to all that. And I thought going into this, these last few months, that teams and clients would be really exhausted and stressed about it, and they are. They're stressed, and it is an ongoing game, and it is exhausting. But people are really excited about it. They're learning and having to adapt and be challenged in a way they've never been before. So it's actually, on the plus side, we've had a lot of retention and employees and growth as an agency from a client perspective in the last 5 months because of our process and how we're thinking strategically and taking it week by week. It's stressful, but it's so wonderfully well performing, and it's feeding our egos this time.
That's really interesting. So,
yeah.
so Bergay, as a brand advertiser yourself, and responsible for those plans, are you seeing that as well? Are you changing to a month-to-month, a week-to-week structure in terms of how you're operating your brand?
Absolutely. I mean, what we learned throughout this experience is to be nimble, right? Everybody needs to become more efficient in terms of how those plans are developed. And we constantly stay in touch with consumers to see, okay, do we need to adjust our messaging? Do we need to adjust our channels that we're talking to the consumers? So it's constant tracking, listening our consumers through social media, and adapting our plans to fit what their needs are. For example, when the crisis hit, it was all about safety and security. So that was the main focus for any brand to communicate. And then we really shifted towards how can we be there for you and provide the products and services that you need. So it's definitely a much more agile marketing environment that I'm seeing.
And that's interesting that all three of you say that, and the sense of agility is not only coming from, I think, the brand advertisers, but it's also in the response from the consumers, right? The consumers are changing too, right? And there is probably, I think, a more rapid feedback loop between what the consumers are buying, how the brands are responding to those consumer purchases, and how the consumers are responding to the brand's responses, right? So if you're leaning into social media and you're leaning into some of those channels, that's a really interactive channel with your customer base. And then as brands, you have to respond to what the customers are saying.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. I'm reading a book right now called The Biggest Bluff by Marina Konnikova. Highly recommend it, because what she's talking about in poker is how you blend skill and luck, and to be constantly paying attention to new hands that are unfolding in front of you, and what that means, right? So you've got a couple of cards, and then suddenly that changes how your hand's going to play out, and also based on what's put down on the table and what everyone else is doing. So it's this constant feedback loop where you're either rewarded or punished by your good decisions based on how much, what kind of chips you're coming in and going in. So I think that what you just talked about is a good analogy for that, where you're having to prepare with as much skill as possible, rapidly changing environments, a lot of which you can't control, right? The deck of the cards is the deck of the cards, and you can't quite control that. So with that, I guess, Sean, I'm going to bring it back to you. Heather and Berge had mentioned some social media. Besides that, which I think is a more obvious one, what are some other channels where you see your advertisers leaning in, and what opportunities do you see them leaning into?
Yeah, I think it's a mind shift of, in years past, we really did look at channels. We looked at, sports opportunities. We looked at, we have the election coming up. So what's that going to mean for content on news channels? And what we're really focused on, and it started, I'd say, late last year, but we've accelerated that ourselves, is swinging in the opposite direction, really just looking at audience and selling audiences. How do we engage with the customers that you're looking to speak to? And one of the things, you talk about agility, we're happy to see sports return back to our platform, but, the viability of finishing a season is still in question. We don't know that baseball is going to make it to the end of the season, or basketball, what the return of football or NCAA sports might be. So those audiences are still going to be somewhere. We have to be that bridge helping our advertising partners, right? If Berge is calling the team and saying, how do we, what's going on in the fall? People who typically would watch basketball, where are they going to be watching if they're not watching that?
Right.
And we have to come up with those solutions, right? So it's again, all of our advertising partners have had to have a shift, and it's been, again, put customer first. So from our vantage point, our customers are our agency partners and their customers.
Sure.
So I think if there's anything, it's always been true, but today we have to be real problem solvers. And if you're not spending the time, if you get 15 minutes of somebody's day, especially in this environment, your goal is to come with solutions. And if you're not doing that and solving problems of how you connect to audiences and help them not only connect to, but actually speak to and impact audiences. So that's, I hope that answers the question, but that's really where we're leaning in, because we think if we shift too far in any one direction, that's exactly what this climate is telling us we shouldn't be doing.
Right.
It's be agile. Don't lean so far in one direction. Listen to what the feedback loop is telling you and be prepared to adjust.
Heather, you look like you're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead on. I mean, you talk about leaning in, like we're leaning in, two key areas that help feed all the things that my teams do. Social listening, we do that for clients whether or not they are a social client of ours, because it allows us to understand the sentiment of the audience. So, a client comes to Redditor, we put them into our social listening net base, and we provide those insights on a monthly basis to help feed us on the paid media side, on the SEO side, on any of the other paid media areas, buying, display, OTT, stuff like that, to determine where do we need to be and what are people talking about, and what are those conversations Berge was just talking about, understanding that sentiment and understanding how to transition that conversation from, safety earlier on into, here we're here for you. So like that social listening is so important, but the other big, huge piece is the performance and the analytics, and understanding how it's performing, which channels are doing it, and looking at that on a weekly basis, but daily to some extent too.
Right.
Determine what other channels, where other places, what specific channels within any kind of programmatic buy are doing really well and feeding us high quality traffic. We're not just letting things sit and take in data for quite as long as we normally would. We launch a programmatic effort and display. We, let it collect data for like 2 weeks to really get the algorithm going and figure out, okay, what is this data telling us? Now, in a much shorter time frame, because we're having to strategically decide some bigger decisions much quicker. And so that analytics piece, digging into that is a weekly, daily thing to some extent.
Interesting.
So we're leaning into listening and that analytics.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because you both said not necessarily leaning into a channel, but leaning into a new mode of work, right? Leaning into a more responsive mode of work where you're paying attention and making decisions much faster. Brigade, do you find that as well on your team?
Yeah, I'll give an example from a channel perspective. What we've experienced is driven by the COVID-19 crisis and the shelter-in-place mandates. Consumers are relying on online and contactless experiences more than ever. To give you an example, prior to the pandemic, the Habit Burger was mainly a dine-in concept providing guests high quality food in a relaxing environment. But as a result of dining room closures, we had to pivot very quickly, right? So we have leaned heavily into digital channels such as delivery and curbside pickup. So I'm very excited about the curbside pickup, which offers customers ability to order ahead and get the food delivered to their car conveniently and safely. So these type of channels that emerged because of the crisis, some of them will be here to stay for a lot of restaurant and retail brands. Now, what we're doing is really working on various enhancements to make that experience seamless and frictionless throughout the customer journey. So again, I think you're going to capitalize on those opportunities that come up during, challenging times and, set yourself apart from the competition. So I think that's a good example of shifting efforts to different channels from a sales perspective.
Now, from a channel side, Birgay, did you guys also develop an app or have any app development to help with that mobile curbside experience?
Well, we were very fortunate to had already developed the app, but our IT department did a great job to configure it for the curbside pickup.
Sure.
So they were very agile to get that functionality built into the app. But I think thankfully we had an app to begin with before this happened.
But I'm sure though that instead of normal app development, but you might be like, oh, we take a couple of weeks or months to put this app together.
These days it was a miracle. So everybody came together just to make it happen. So it's really exciting to see what happens in times of crisis.
Right, and it's just what I think Heather and Sean were also speaking about is that it's sharpening us to make us, I think, even better at our work and to pay attention a little bit more tightly and to see what we're actually capable of. And these are lessons that we're learning now as kind of older professionals. And Birgay, I guess I'll stick with you on this for this last question. So if you're a 20 or 30-year-old coming into the market and you're a marketing professional and you're in the midst of some of this, you might not be the decision maker, you might be part of the decision-making team. What do you think is the most important learning for that younger professional to take from this experience and what they should be focused on for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I would say that regardless of your role within the marketing organization, you should be laser focused on understanding consumers' ever-changing needs we talked about to create the type of products, services, or messaging that really resonate with them and sets you apart from the competition. I would also say challenge the status quo, right? Especially during these times, it's very important to stay nimble, take risks, don't go after perfection, fail fast, right? These are maybe, things that have always been around, but even more important now, just learn from it. Don't be afraid to take those risks.
Yeah. Heather, I'll pass that on to you. What are you telling your younger teammates?
Well, it's the same thing I tell them when I'm vetting them to come and work for us is, we work in mostly digital marketing and the consumer and the audience is always changing. So I care less about maybe what you know today. I care more about how you think. And so I'm looking at their skill sets and assessing for how quickly do they learn. I'm asking them specific questions around how they evolved in their digital marketing knowledge on a regular basis, because there's going to be lots of great stuff they can learn from me and senior people on the team who've been doing this for like 2 decades. But there's going to be so much innovation and so much that changes with the audience that I'm going to be relying on them to bring that knowledge. So I'm looking more about how they learn and asking them questions about how they learn, because it's going to segue into being able to change, adapt, and fail fast. I am far from being a person who's like perfectionist. I'm all about performance. And so I'm always looking for people who know how to read performance and adapt and apply it and just keep moving forward in that process and that motion.
Interesting. That's great. Sean, what about advice that you have for those 20 and 30-year-olds listening in today?
Sure. I'm going to hone in on something that Heather said a moment ago, and it really goes around the ability to harness data and analytics, but coupling that with storytelling, right? Particularly if you're a marketer. I'm not a quant, right? But I made good friends with our quants and our analysts in our department. But you have to be able to tell a story, right? And that story is going to be ever changing. And I think we've heard that echoed. But understanding the numbers, what's driving the numbers, and being able to use that as a forecast tool, because the forecast is changing, but there's still numbers to support some of our hunches or disprove some of the assumptions we've made, so we can make those adjustments quickly.
Great. Well, that's wonderful insight, guys. I really appreciate it, and I think that from my perspective, the larger takeaways of the 2020 change is that even though times are uncertain, here's a news flash for you: times have always been uncertain, always. There's never been certainty ever, and that's I think that people in business recognize that the only thing the only thing that you can count on is change, and all the other cliches, and they're cliches for a reason. But I think what happened this year for the 2020 playbook is that it forced us to focus on those key fundamentals of adaptability, agility, change, constantly learning, and just quickened the pace of the work that we're doing. And my hunch, and just from what you guys have been talking about, is I think if we're paying attention, we come out of this a lot sharper and smarter, and that the impact into 2021 and beyond is actually going to be a change of pace and a change of work, and how we say, gosh, we don't need to plan 6-9 months in advance. Our 4-month plan works great. In fact, our 4-week plan is great, right? And let's keep cheating that down to see how quickly we can respond to the changing needs of customers. Because in the end, we're all about, how do you best serve those customers, and how do you adapt and respond and get ahead of some of their changing needs. This was great. Any final thoughts? Or Thomas, should I pass it back to you and you can close us out?
I think we should wrap it up if we're staying
Excellent.
with Tape 20. So I am going to hop back on real quick. Say thank you to everybody. Sergey, Heather, Chris, Sean. That's the order you are on my screen. We appreciate everything that you've done. Really great conversation. For our viewers, your chance to attend a live online Take 20 episode and ask questions of the speakers is coming soon, kicking off later this month. Keep an eye out for an announcement of the next episode and your opportunity to register. Speaking of registering for things, I've got to tell you that our PDMI West Virtual, September 14 through 16, registration is open now, and you're going to have a chance to hear more on this topic from our Brand Response Council. So if you're interested in that, please do visit the website, thepdmi.com, and find out your chance to register there. So thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your work week. Stay safe, stay well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.